It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I had waited for this moment for years. The day I would marry the love of my life. We'd built our future together, and everything was perfect. The venue was beautiful, the guests were thrilled, and I couldn't believe that after all these years, I was finally marrying Adam, the man I had loved since college. He was kind, thoughtful, and we had been inseparable. We were the perfect couple. At least, that's what I thought. The ceremony went off without a hitch. My heart was full, and I couldn't stop smiling. But little did I know, that smile would be wiped off my face by the time the night was over. As the ceremony concluded, Adam and I stood together at the altar, looking out at our friends and family, sharing our vows. And then, I turned to look at the one person who had been by my side through thick and thin, my best friend Vanessa. Vanessa had been with me through everything, breakups, family troubles, every high and low. I trusted her with my deepest secrets. She was the one person I could always count on. But that night, when I turned to her, I saw something different in her eyes. Something cold, calculating. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I brushed it off. I had too much joy in my heart to focus on anything else. And then, after the ceremony, just when I thought the night couldn't get any better, I went to greet Adam, my brand new husband. That's when I saw them. Adam and Vanessa, standing together by the bar laughing. The way they looked at each other made something in my gut twist, but I tried to ignore it. I walked up to them, beaming, excited to share the moment. But that's when it happened. Adam pulled away from Vanessa, his smile fading as he looked at me. "Hey, we need to talk," he said. And right then, I knew something was terribly wrong. Something was off, and I was about to lose everything. The way Adam said those words, "We need to talk," sent a chill straight through me. For a moment, I thought I had imagined the tension in the air, but now, standing in front of them, my stomach twisted with unease. I forced a smile. "What's going on?" "It's our wedding night, you know." Adam didn't return the smile. Instead, he glanced at Vanessa, who was nervously fiddling with the strap of her dress. That's when I noticed it, the awkwardness between them. The way they both seemed to be avoiding each other's gaze. The way Adam's hand stayed at his side, not holding mine like I expected. My heart raced as a creeping sense of dread washed over me. "We need to talk about something," Adam repeated, but this time his voice was lower, almost strained. He looked at Vanessa again before he turned back to me. "Adam," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "What's going on? What's wrong?" Vanessa took a deep breath and stepped forward, her face pale. "Maya, I think you need to know something. It's about Adam and me." I blinked, my mind struggling to comprehend what was happening. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My heart began to beat faster, panic rising in my chest. She hesitated, as if weighing her words. "I've been in love with Adam for a long time. And I know this is hard to hear, but I think you deserve to know the truth." The world seemed to stop. I felt as if the ground had been ripped out from under me. The room spun, and the voices around me became muffled. I stared at Vanessa, then at Adam, who looked guilty. "Wait, what? What do you mean you've been in love with him?" I managed to choke out. My hands were trembling as I clutched the edge of the nearest table for support. My mind was scrambling for any kind of logic, anything to explain what was happening. "This isn't real," I told myself. "This is a bad joke. This can't be happening." Adam took a deep breath. "Maya, I never meant for it to happen like this," he said quietly, his voice almost apologetic. "Vanessa and we've been seeing each other. For a while now." I felt like I had been slapped across the face. My breath caught in my throat, and I struggled to stay upright as the weight of his words sank in. "They've been seeing each other? No, this didn't make sense. How could this happen? You." I trailed off, the words escaping my lips in a soft, disbelieving whisper. "You've been with her, behind my back? All this time?" Vanessa nodded, her eyes filled with shame. "I'm so sorry, Maya," she said softly. "I never wanted to hurt you. But I couldn't keep this from you any longer. It wasn't fair to either of us." I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if someone had just driven a knife through my heart. The anger started to bubble up, but it was overshadowed by the raw, overwhelming sense of betrayal. My best friend had been sleeping with my fiancé. How long had this been going on? Was I just the fool, blind to everything around me? Adam stepped closer, his voice desperate now. "Maya, please understand, it wasn't like that. I never meant for it to happen. I thought I could make it work with both of you. But," he trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. "You thought you could make it work?" I repeated, my voice rising with incredulity. "How could you think that was okay? How could either of you think this was okay?" I couldn't breathe. The weight of it was suffocating. It felt like my whole world had collapsed in a matter of seconds. But then something else hit me. The way Adam had said, "I thought I could make it work with both of you." There was no shame in his eyes. No regret. He wasn't even sorry that he had betrayed me. He wasn't even looking at me like he had any remorse. This was all about him. His selfishness. His ego. I took a step back, away from both of them. "So, this was all a game to you?" I asked, my voice barely audible now. "I was just a placeholder until you decided who you really wanted?" "I didn't want it to be this way," Adam said, his voice softer now, but his words fell flat. "I never wanted to hurt you." I shook my head, backing away from him. "It's too late for apologies, Adam. You've already hurt me more than you can ever understand." I turned to Vanessa, my best friend, the one person I had trusted with every part of my life. "And you," I said, my voice growing cold. "How could you do this to me? After everything we've been through?" "I never meant to hurt you," she repeated, but her words felt empty. They meant nothing now. Nothing could undo what she had done. I turned and walked out of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to get away from them. From the lies, from the betrayal. I found myself standing outside, staring up at the night sky, trying to make sense of the chaos in my head. The tears came, uncontrollable, and I let them fall. But even as I cried, I knew something in me was changing. I wasn't going to be the victim here. I wasn't going to let them destroy me. This wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning. And I swore to myself right then that I would make them pay. For every lie. For every betrayal. I would make sure that they never got away with this. The days that followed were a blur of emotions I couldn't process. I didn't go to work, I didn't pick up the phone, and I avoided all contact with anyone who might have known Adam or Vanessa. I was consumed by the shock, by the pain of being betrayed by the two people I had trusted most. My best friend, who had been my confidant, my rock, and my partner in crime. And Adam, the man I had promised to spend the rest of my life with. But the worst part? Neither of them seemed to feel any guilt. They seemed to think I should just accept it and move on. They wanted me to understand their side of things, but I wasn't ready for that. I couldn't even look at them. Not after what they'd done. I spent hours staring at the walls of my apartment, replaying that moment over and over in my mind. How did this happen? What went wrong? Why didn't I see it sooner? I thought about Adam, about his promises, about how he looked at me on our wedding day. His gaze had been filled with love, or so I thought. I had trusted him completely. I had let him into every corner of my life, and now, in an instant, it was all shattered. Then there was Vanessa. She had been my best friend for years. We had shared everything. Our fears, our joys, our secrets. She had been my closest confidant. How had I not seen the jealousy in her eyes? How had I not noticed that she was the one pulling the strings behind the scenes, slowly working her way into Adam's heart? I wanted to scream, to shout at them both. To tell them how much they had hurt me, how they had destroyed my trust and my life. But instead, I did nothing. I stayed silent. But silence can be powerful, and as the days passed, I began to realize something. I wasn't just a victim here. I was stronger than that. I had a mind that could figure this out. I had patience. And most importantly, I had time. I started to plan. The first step was simple: gather information. I didn't know how long Adam and Vanessa had been seeing each other, but I needed to find out. I started by going through Adam's phone, hoping there would be some kind of evidence. I found nothing. Of course, he had deleted everything. He was smarter than I gave him credit for. But there was something about his behavior that nagged at me. He was too calm, too collected. He wasn't acting like someone who had just betrayed his wife. He was acting like someone who had everything figured out. So, I turned to Vanessa. I spent hours thinking about how to approach her. I knew she wouldn't come clean willingly. I had to get to her in a way that would make her feel cornered. I knew she would never admit to what she had done unless I could force her into it. I began reaching out to people who had known her in the past, friends from college, old coworkers, people who had seen her for who she truly was before she had come into my life. I didn't tell them about Adam. I just asked about her behavior, about her relationships, about anything that could give me a clue as to how far back this had all started. The answers I got were unsettling. People described her as charming, manipulative, and always the center of attention. She had always gotten what she wanted, even if it meant stepping on others to get there. But what shocked me most was that a few people mentioned something I hadn't expected. She had done this before. There were whispers of her using people in her past relationships. Using them, discarding them when she was done. It was all coming together now. Vanessa wasn't just someone who made a mistake. She was a master manipulator, and she had played both Adam and me like pawns in her game. I knew what I had to do next. If I was going to expose the truth, I needed proof. I needed something concrete. I started to follow her. Quietly, carefully. I kept my distance, making sure she didn't know I was watching her every move. I wanted to see how she acted when she thought no one was paying attention. I needed to find her weaknesses. And that's when I saw it. Vanessa was meeting with someone. Someone I didn't recognize. They were sitting at a cafe, talking in hushed tones. I stayed out of sight, but I watched them carefully. It wasn't until the man stood up to leave that I realized who it was. It was one of Adam's old friends, the one he had been close to before we even met. The one who had disappeared after Adam, and I got serious. I didn't know exactly what this meant, but I knew it wasn't good. This wasn't just about a simple affair. There was something more here, something bigger. The next step was dangerous, but I was ready. I approached Adam's friend, the one who had met with Vanessa. I didn't tell him who I was at first. I played the part of a concerned woman, someone who was just trying to understand what had happened. He wasn't suspicious at first, and we exchanged pleasantries. But I wasn't there for small talk. I asked him about Vanessa, about his relationship with her. And I watched his face carefully, looking for signs of guilt. I didn't have to wait long. His eyes flickered for a split second when I mentioned her name. That's when I knew he knew something. And whatever it was, he wasn't telling me. That's when I turned the conversation. I asked him directly, "Did Vanessa and Adam ever have a thing before I came into the picture?" His reaction told me everything I needed to know. He hesitated, then looked down at his drink, his fingers trembling slightly. "Look," he said, lowering his voice, "I don't know what's going on with all of that. But if you're asking if something happened between Adam and Vanessa, all I'll say is, you don't know her like I do. She gets what she wants, no matter who she hurts in the process." My heart sank. This wasn't just about Adam's betrayal. This was about something far deeper, something darker. Vanessa had been manipulating people for years. But now I had the key. The truth was within reach, and I was finally ready to expose it. I walked away from that conversation with the answers I needed. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew what I had to do. I was going to take back everything she had stolen from me. And this time, I wasn't going to let her win. The days after my conversation with Adam's friend felt like a turning point. I had the truth. Vanessa wasn't just a manipulative liar. She had been orchestrating everything from the beginning, using people like pawns in her game of deception. Adam was just another part of her web. But the more I learned, the more I realized this wasn't about just hurting me. This was about power, control. And once I understood her game, I could finally play mine. I knew the only way to expose her was to get her to reveal her hand. I had to keep her close, let her believe she still had control, while I worked in the shadows to dismantle everything she had built. Patience. It was the only weapon I had left, and I would use it wisely. The first part of my plan was to play the role of the victim. I stayed quiet. I let Adam and Vanessa think I was shattered, that I was too broken to fight back. I kept my distance from them, avoided contact, and waited. Every day, I kept up the facade, pretending to mourn the loss of my marriage, pretending to be the woman who had been betrayed and abandoned. Adam, for all his faults, still cared about appearances. And his guilt ate at him. He reached out to me, apologized again, said things he thought would make me believe him. He asked me to forgive him, as if I could just forget everything he had done. But I didn't react. I let him talk, let him plead. I gave him nothing but silence. Vanessa, on the other hand, was smug. She believed she had won. She thought I had accepted defeat. She posted photos on social media, images of her and Adam together, holding hands, their smiles too wide, their love too perfect. It made me sick, but I knew it was part of her act. She was putting on a show for everyone, and I was just waiting for her to slip. And slip she did. One evening, when I was out running errands, I saw them. Adam and Vanessa, walking down the street hand in hand. Their laughter echoed through the empty street, and I felt a pang of jealousy, but I didn't let it show. I watched them for a few moments, carefully noting their actions, their comfort with each other. But what caught my eye wasn't just the image of them together. It was something else. Vanessa slipped something into Adam's coat pocket. It was subtle, a quick movement, but I saw it. She had just handed him something, and I knew it wasn't just a love note. I knew it had to be something important. I didn't hesitate. I followed them from a distance, staying out of sight. They went to a small cafe, one I had never seen them visit before. I waited outside for a while watching. After a couple of hours, Adam left, walking in the opposite direction. It was my chance. I walked into the cafe, trying to act as casual as possible, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. Vanessa was sitting alone at a table near the window, scrolling through her phone. She looked up, saw me, and for a brief moment, the smug smile she always wore faltered. "Maya," she said a little too sweetly. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer. Instead, I sat across from her, my gaze unwavering. "I think we need to talk." Her face tightened. "I don't know what else there is to say." "Oh, there's a lot to say," I replied coolly. "And I think it's time you stopped pretending." She raised an eyebrow, but didn't speak. I took a deep breath, looking directly into her eyes. "I saw what you gave Adam today." For the first time, Vanessa's composure cracked. She looked away, her fingers gripping her phone tighter. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, though her voice was a little shaky. I leaned in closer, lowering my voice just enough, so only she could hear. "I saw you hand him something. I saw you try to keep it hidden." Vanessa didn't respond, but I saw the panic in her eyes. She knew she was caught. "I know what you've been doing, Vanessa," I continued, my voice steady. "I know about the money. I know about the plan. And I know you were working with someone. Someone who's been helping you keep all of this hidden." Her face paled. "You don't know anything," she whispered, though her voice was laced with fear now. "You have no idea what you're talking about." I smiled coldly, watching her squirm. "I know exactly what I'm talking about. And you should be worried." I stood up and turned to leave, but not before I dropped a final bombshell. "I'm not the one who's going to get hurt in the end, Vanessa. You will be." The next few days were quiet, too quiet. I didn't hear from Vanessa or Adam, and I knew it was because they were trying to cover their tracks. But I wasn't done yet. I had a bigger plan in motion, one that would make sure they couldn't get away with this. I started collecting evidence. Every conversation, every email, every little detail that could tie Vanessa and Adam together. I dug through Adam's old financial records and discovered a series of large transfers to an unknown account. That account was linked to a company that, interestingly enough, Vanessa was connected to. I had them now. I had everything I needed to expose them. But I wasn't going to rush. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me desperate. I was going to wait until they thought they had won, until they thought I had finally given up. Days passed, and I stayed quiet. The longer I held back, the more it gnawed at Vanessa. She sent me a few texts, but I didn't respond. Adam tried to call, but I ignored him too. I let them believe I had moved on, that I had forgotten everything. But that's when the plan kicked into high gear. It all came to a head one night when Adam invited me to meet him. He was desperate. He wanted me to forgive him, to let him back into my life. But what he didn't know was that I was no longer the woman he had deceived. I wasn't the heartbroken wife anymore. I walked into the cafe where he wanted to meet me. I saw him sitting at the table, his face full of regret. He stood up as I approached, but I held up a hand to stop him. "You don't get to apologize, Adam," I said quietly but firmly. "You've had your chances." Adam looked confused, but I could see the recognition in his eyes. He knew something was different. "I've been watching you," I continued, "and everything you've done has been exposed. You and Vanessa, you thought you could hide everything. But I've already collected everything. The transfers, the accounts, the emails. And I'm going to make sure the truth comes out." The color drained from his face as I slid a file across the table. He opened it slowly, his hands trembling. "You have nothing left," I whispered. "This is the end of the road for you." The look in Adam's eyes as he realized everything was over was the sweetest part of this whole journey. Because this time, I was the one in control. And no one could take that away from me. The moment Adam's eyes flickered over the documents, I knew I had him. I had waited for this moment, played my part perfectly, and now it was time for the truth to rip through the lies he and Vanessa had carefully constructed. They thought they could destroy me. They thought they could take everything I had worked for. But now, everything was falling apart for them. Adam's fingers trembled as he scrolled through the pages I'd handed him. The shock in his eyes was evident. His usual confidence was nowhere to be found. He had underestimated me. "Where did you get this?" he whispered, his voice strained. "I've been keeping tabs," I said coldly, watching him closely. "You thought I wouldn't find out. But I did. I always knew there was something off, and now I have all the proof I need." His face paled as he looked up from the documents, but I could see the gears turning in his head. He was trying to figure out how to get out of this mess. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He was cornered. "Adam," I said, my voice ice cold. "You thought I would just let this slide. You thought I would just walk away quietly, pretending everything was fine while you and Vanessa destroyed my life. But you were wrong. I paused, letting the silence stretch between us. I could see the panic in his eyes now. The man who had once seemed so sure of himself was reduced to a shell, trying to grasp for control he had already lost. I'm not the one who's going to lose here, I continued. You and Vanessa, on the other hand, you're both finished. He looked down at the papers again, probably realizing that he couldn't talk his way out of it anymore. You don't know what you're dealing with, Adam finally said, his voice quieter now, but there was still a hint of defiance in it. Oh, I know exactly what I'm dealing with, I replied sharply. You and Vanessa think you can get away with anything. You think because you have money and influence, you're untouchable. But that's not how this works. I'm going to expose you both for everything you've done. And when I'm done, your lives will be ruined. Adam stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly across the floor. You can't do this, he said, desperation creeping into his voice. You don't have the power to ruin us. We've already won. You're the one who's going to be the loser in all this. You can't bring us down. I stood up too, my eyes never leaving his. I already have, I said, my words cutting through the tension in the air. The real question is, how long do you think you can run from the truth? Adam swallowed hard, but before he could respond, I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I showed him the video, a video that Vanessa had thought she had deleted. The video of her confessing everything to me. The video that would ruin her. You're done, I said, my voice low and steady. This video is going public, and so is everything else I've uncovered. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what kind of people you really are. Adam's face twisted in anger, but there was no denying the fear behind his eyes now. You can't do this, he repeated, but his voice was shaky. You'll regret it. I shook my head. No, Adam. You're the one who's going to regret all of this. You're the one who thought you could play both sides and get away with it. I didn't wait for Adam to say anything else. I turned and walked out of the cafe, my heart pounding, but with a sense of triumph I hadn't felt in months. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my life again. But the real victory wasn't in confronting Adam. The real victory was in what came next. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, emails, and meetings with my lawyer. But every single moment was worth it. I had made sure the video I had of Vanessa was shared with key people. People who would ensure it reached the right places. There was no escaping it. Vanessa tried to spin her story, but the more she tried, the worse it became for her. People started speaking out about her manipulative behavior, her lies, and her ability to destroy anyone in her path. The moment I had been waiting for finally arrived. Vanessa was exposed for everything she had done. The public turned on her, and Adam was right behind her. The more I watched them unravel, the more I realized how much power they had taken from me. But now it was mine to take back. One afternoon, I received a call from Adam. I'm sorry, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I never meant to hurt you. Please, you have to understand. I wasn't interested in his apology. The time for forgiveness had passed. You're not sorry, Adam. You're sorry because you got caught. If you truly cared about me, you wouldn't have betrayed me like this. He stayed silent for a long time, and for a moment, I thought he had hung up. But then he spoke again. I'll do anything to make it right. Please, just give me a chance. I laughed bitterly. You don't get to make it right. What's done is done. You can't erase the past. You can't erase the betrayal. There was a long pause, and then Adam finally spoke, his voice filled with regret. I know. I'm sorry. I'll never forgive myself. I hung up, knowing that no apology could fix the damage. But it didn't matter. Because I had won. The final blow came when Vanessa's company was audited, and the evidence I had uncovered about her financial misdeeds became public. She was investigated for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. It didn't take long for her to lose everything: her wealth, her status, her influence. She tried to flee, but the law was already closing in on her. And Adam? He lost the public's respect, his career crumbled, and his relationship with Vanessa fell apart in the wake of the scandal. He was left with nothing. I watched them both fall, knowing that everything they had done to me had led them to this moment. They had underestimated me. They had thought they could break me. But in the end, I was the one who stood tall. And I was finally free. When everything finally went quiet, that was when it hit me the hardest. No more messages. No more threats. No more lies disguised as apologies. For months, my life had been noise, arguments, betrayal, fear, revenge, exposure. I had lived in survival mode for so long that when it ended, the silence felt almost unreal. Adam disappeared from my world completely. After the scandal, his name became toxic. Friends distanced themselves. Business partners cut ties. Invitations stopped coming. The man who once thought he could juggle two lives and lose nothing ended up with neither. Vanessa's fall was even worse. She didn't just lose her relationship. She lost her reputation, her career, her carefully built image. People who once admired her now avoided her. The same charm that had once opened every door now worked against her. No one trusted her anymore. Every smile she gave was questioned. Every word she spoke was doubted. And that was justice. But the strange thing was, I didn't feel joy watching them fall. I felt relief. Because revenge isn't about happiness. It's about closure. I moved out of the apartment we once shared. Every corner held memories I didn't want to carry into my future. I chose a small place in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, just peaceful. For the first time in a long time, I slept through the night. I started therapy. Not because I was weak, but because I was strong enough to admit that betrayal leaves scars you can't just ignore. I learned that anger can keep you alive for a while, but healing is what keeps you living. Little by little, I rebuilt myself. I went back to work. I reconnected with friends who had stood by me quietly, without judgment. I learned to enjoy my own company again. And slowly, I began to understand something important. Adam didn't ruin my life. Vanessa didn't steal my future. They only revealed who they truly were. One afternoon, months later, I received a message from an unknown number. It was Vanessa. She didn't apologize. Not really. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She wrote, "I thought winning meant having what you had. I didn't realize it would cost me everything. I hope you're happy now." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I deleted it. Not because I hated her, but because she no longer mattered. That was my real victory. People often ask me now, "Do you regret how far you took it?" No, because I didn't destroy anyone's life. I simply stopped protecting their lies. If the truth ruins someone, that's not cruelty. That's consequence. Today, my life looks very different. It's quieter, smaller, but real. I don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. I don't compete. I don't compare. I don't beg for loyalty. I choose peace. And here's the lesson I learned the hard way. The people who betray you are often the ones closest to you. Not because you were blind, but because you trusted with a pure heart. And that is never a weakness. Adam thought he could replace me. Vanessa thought she could become me. But neither of them understood one thing. You can steal a role. You can steal a person. You can even steal a moment. But you can never steal someone's soul. I lost a marriage. I lost a best friend. But I found myself. And that was worth everything.